It's already been a long morning. Hello again. Uh, I had to go and get all my bags and packed up, so I was one of those rushing. Uh, no, it's good to be here. Again, I want to give thanks to uh, the planning committee, our host, our sponsors, everyone that made this possible, and the tribunal, uh, our president, Stefan, our other judge, our expert, or Margaret, is here, our other judge, and uh, it really allowed me to put my thoughts together. And I want to show a film as a lead to what I'm going to talk about. It's just short. As a director of the Indigenous Environmental Network, we were formed by youth and elders and women's societies back in 1990. It was a time when there was really no voice, a collective voice for our frontline communities dealing with the extractive industry and extractive economy. It was a time when there were a lot of tribal governments who have that close relationship with the U.S. government. And the agenda of the U.S. government has always been to get a buy-in and to negotiate with our elected tribal leadership around oil and mining and even the storage of nuclear waste, deforestation, those things that maybe might be hard for you to understand. But the impacts of assimilation and acculturation of colonization is very real in North America, including Canada. Even the maintaining our languages, our ceremonies, all this, there seemed to have been always a struggle to maintain our identity as Indigenous peoples. So our network was formed in 1990 as a voice. And it's been a long road since 1990. I was brought on in 1991. I was working for one of the largest tribes in Minnesota, a little bit over 1 million acres of land. It was a time when most of our tribal governments, as tribal nations, did not have environmental protection mechanisms in place. Every state in the United States had environmental protection programs. And when the state does that, they receive delegated authority from the U.S. EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. They receive officially, legally delegated authority to implement their own programs. In Indian country, and with our American Indian tribes and our Alaska Natives, less than 10 total of over 300 tribal nations had anything in place. So when you think about the main agenda of the United States government is to open up Western forms of development in our lands and our territories, there's no one watching the shop when it comes to evaluating and assessing these forms of development that could further contaminate, devastate our territories and our lands. And that's why our network was born out of that concern. We have staff as organizers that operate in both worlds. We operate in our traditional communities, we understand our traditions, languages, but also we understand the way of the white man. We understand their laws as well. So it's been a long journey since 1990, 91, 92. We've always been grassroots. Grassroots. That's who our constituency is as Indigenous Environmental Network. We're grassroots. I want to say that as a lead-in, because with that comes a lot of challenges. That we cannot do this work as Indigenous peoples to work on the environment, on the health, and to put a social justice and environmental justice lens to this work. It involves racism back in the United States. We have federal laws that's supposed to protect everyone from harm and contamination. But when we had studies that looked at this, we found that it was Indian lands or people of color, African American, Latino, Asian, poor white people. Communities are not protected equally. So there's environmental racism that creeps in. So that means that my generation in 1990, 92, 93, we had to really step up to demand justice. And part of that was also involving civil resistance, our own indigenous civil resistance, our own indigenous civil disobedience. Some of us came from the history of the American Indian movement and other movements that was led by our uncles, by our aunties, our parents. And at 1990, 91, 92, and throughout the 90s was a time for really developing something, a network that maintains that connection to our communities on the front lines. So there was no other model that we can bear upon. And we challenged the top environmental organizations with an institutional racism and who want to come into our territories as if they have solutions and answers to saying, you need to do it this way. But no, as Indigenous people, we need to figure it out ourselves. And that's where part of our movement was going back to something that is always there. And that's our original instructions, the importance of our ceremonies, the importance of our language, the importance of who we are and our identification. Our identification, not a passport, but our identification to the mother, Unchi Maka, Grandmother Earth. And it was really good to be able to train organizers that are familiar not only with what I just said, but they can go to Washington, D.C. I call Washington deceit many times, people that keep track of what I say. And we participate in these federal agencies with caution, definitely with caution. We don't put all our faith and trust that the United States EPA is going to come and resolve things for us. No. But we got to hold them accountable. We signed treaty agreements. We gave land to the settlers who came to America. We gave them land. We went into negotiations of treaties. And there's obligations that were reserved, that we reserved, obligations, financial obligations in exchange for land that we gave to the settlers. That's in the treaties. So we still maintain that quasi-sovereign. You say we are sovereign as nations. And we will continue to stand on that. Now, flip forward. A situation came up on a pipeline coming from the tar sands of Canada, bitumen, tar-like substance. And it was something new to a lot of us. What is this unconventional oil? It's thick. It needs to have chemicals. It needs to have boiling water. 4 barrels of water to 1 barrel of oil that is produced, that much water up in northern Canada. And I've been there many times. I saw the devastation, the smell of that fossil fuel up there. And they want to transport that tar sands oil in pipelines, but not to be refined and introduced into the gas tanks of the cars and vehicles of the United States or even Canada, to be exported to faraway countries. It's about money. So as we studied about this pipeline, we learned that it's not like the old oil of years ago. It has chemicals in it. It also heats about 150 degrees, 170 degrees. It's very corrosive. So in the inside liner of this pipe, eventually it's going to erode. It's going to have leaks. All pipelines leak. So we began shifting our gears to taking on pipeline issues. Enbridge was one of our first Alberta Clipper line we got involved with. And then eventually the keystone of TransCanada. So I want to give some of this background because it involves recognition of our grandmothers and our grandfathers and our youth and our women's societies on the front lines where these pipelines are going. As they understand and learn about it, they say, no, we don't give our consent. Tribal government's starting to organize on it, even though the federal government comes in and say, don't worry, we got it taken care of. Federal government says, we got laws to protect you. But then we know that when there needs to be a comprehensive environmental assessment, we have to push it just to have a comprehensive environmental assessment on the construction of these proposed pipelines, especially in an area that affects us really dearly in our heart. These pipelines are going through old lands and territories that we have occupied for thousands and thousands of years. Many of the people say since the beginning of time. We have a lot of historical sites, cultural sites, spiritual sites, sacred areas. And most of our tribes in the prairie lands where this pipeline was going did not have adequate capacity and time to do the necessary cultural inventory of all these sites that could be destroyed and damaged as the bulldozers go through the prairie lands. Big issue. So one of the very simple fundamental things that the tribes were asking, allow us to have full consultation with you. Allow us to do our job, to do cultural inventory assessments. So this is what took place that led to Obama, putting pressure on Obama to finally make a decision to stop the development of the TransCanada KXL pipeline. It was a win. We celebrated. The people in South Dakota celebrated. Montana, Nebraska celebrated. But right after that win was the Dakota Access Pipeline, another pipeline with another type of fossil fuel though. This is fracked oil, hydraulic fracturing of the oil, coming from North Dakota, coming from the homeland, in fact, of the Fort Berthold Reservation of the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Rickawa tribes, 3 affiliated tribes. One of our staff organizers comes from that area. And it's something, yes, we've been involved with, trying to stop it at the front end, you would say, at the head of the snake. But somehow these monsters continue to grow and flow, and the proposal was another pipeline, Dakota Access Pipeline. So the community there in Standing Rock asked us to come in and help. And the tribe also asked us to come in and help. That was around February, March, April of 2016. And we never knew there was going to be thousands of people like that. The call out in the summer was the call out for people to come and support the Hunkpapa Lakotas and Standing Rock. And so that took place. And there was a ceremony that was held at the beginning on what do they do? What is the guidance for people now are coming? So in translation of these ceremonies, there was a message from the Creator. Is stay close to your heart. Stay close to your mind and stay close to your sacred instruments, your prayer. Stay really close because a lot of things are going to happen. And be in peace of yourself. Be in peace of mind. Be in peace of mind and your heart. Sometimes the longest journey between us as human beings, all cultures, is between our mind and our heart. So these things were said. And so that was the platform. We invite everyone to come. And people did come. And keeping everyone focused on peace and prayer, but to hold the line peace and prayer, but be firm on what we represent. We represent that way of teachings. We have ceremonies. So, Orville Looking Horse, my Tahanshi, my cousin, you could say, Tahanshi, he's the keeper of the Buffalo Calf Pipe Bundle. And he was active, and he was going to the UN for a meeting. I believe it was in Geneva. And he said to our media, Indigenous media team, Indigenous Rising Media, you can see the footage that we created, like the video. We created video. That was part of our role we settled in on. And so we created a video to help Orville on his trip to United Nations, because it's hard to convey just in words. People are visual. So our media team, Jade Begay and others, they put together a video that's just a short that visualizes the story of creation, that tells the story of who the people are of this land and the relationship to creation, natural law, but it also takes a snapshot of the Genesis, the beginning of time. When the colonizers came to the Americas, they never asked us if we had any kind of spiritual foundation. In fact, under international law in those times of the 1700s, 1600s, 1800s, there was international law that was very difficult for another country to come in and invade another country. But they needed the blessings of the church. They needed the blessings of the church to say that the people of the Americas are not civilized, that we are pagans. These concepts, maybe some of you are familiar with these concepts that go back thousands of years in your home. Where are these tribes again of your own territories? But our people were considered less than human. We didn't have souls. Talk about a whole identification that was created in who we are and our identity. Colonization and conquest of our minds. So I wanted to say this because that's woven in, and how do we tell the story of who we are and how important our people are to be consulted on any kind of development. And it shows some of the aggressiveness as if we're dealing with companies, corporations, and governments who have violence against our people, who are only water defenders. But that violence is the same thing that happens to Mother Earth. It's as if there's a war against Mother Earth. Why do we live in a society where we have to defend the sacredness of this water here? We have to fight for it, stand firm. They will resist us. They resisted us there. So I'm going to show you this film that was produced real quick here. And you have to put on your glasses. This film was done in Dakota by Orville Looking Horse.
Ona o kekapi na uglak sapi on na oyate ki kefira nasi wanya kapi na ha tatahan oyate uchoye kile utefike eche samkhaya eche wanya kapi de otka he ha wakanta he tuktugna makapna eche uchoye de he kubi na makapna eche tuktugna yuashte yuakha na uchoki yake.
We were there to protect and defend and to renew ourselves as well. But we added a fourth a year later on a march in Washington, D.C. We added to resist, that we have to resist. But it's resisting a world that does not understand its own relationship to the creative female principle of Mother Earth. It does not understand the natural laws that many of indigenous peoples throughout the world understand. And it allows the world to really look more at itself. This is what came out of Standing Rock. People woke up. Something to do with this terminology of mini wachoni. Something to do with water of life. It went all over the world. Something visual that thousands of people came, thousands of support throughout the world, waking up as if they've been asleep. So that's a lot of the positive that came out of that. I say positive because yes, that black snake is in the ground. That oil blood, that blood money is flowing. The last stoppage in Louisiana, there's a small group of people there trying to stop it in the Everglades, you could say, in the bogs. Very difficult. So, but what's important is what the message is, to be at peace with Mother Earth. When we say, Unchi maka wichoni maku, Unchi is more of the respect of the grandmother Earth, the elder Mother Earth. Unchi maka wichoni maku. When we say of our relationship to Wakantanka wichoni maku. Great Spirit gives me life. Unchi maka gives me life. Wakantanka maka wichoni maku. Great Spirit gives Mother Earth life. This is all the makeup of the understanding of Mitakie Owasi, is we're all related. We are all related. And that's part of the message that I've been just reinforced to talk about whenever I visit people. Because that's the word the real movement is about. And that's why we decided to take part in the Global Alliance on Rights of Nature, this movement. Margelle is here. I don't know where she is. Raise your hand. There's many others that are here, are part of this movement, and they're not indigenous. But again, that's a prophecy. That's a prophecy that many of our indigenous peoples in the Americas, we had a prophecy that the settlers who landed on our shore, yes, there was conflict. Yes, there was death. Yes, there was a serious misunderstanding. We had different understanding of the cosmology, of the makeup of how we exist. Yes. But there was prophecy that some of their children, great-great-grandchildren, they're going to start coming back to understand what we've been talking about what their relationship is. And that's why it's very important in this movement that must include people from throughout the world to understand what the relationship is and to be able to evaluate what that is to that sacredness of Mother Earth. When we talk about what my Tahashi Orville Looking Horse talked about. My last comment I want to make, zero. My last comment I want to make is something that's very dear to me, is that if we stand for the rights of Mother Earth, if we stand for the territorial integrity of Mother Earth, is that we have to really ask ourselves, what is our position on this movement that the corporations, the financial institutions, the investors, the oligarchies, that extractive economy, their movement is the financialization of nature. Capitalism of climate change. And that's why I wanted to say that this is an important issue. That we have a long history that whenever there's been an attempt to commodify our seeds, our water, even labor and forests, our ideas are privatized. My other Tahashi, John Trudell, he passed away. He was a poet. He talked about the predatory instinct as taken on colonization and the colonizers and their descendants from the settler mentality. It's kind of like we're dealing with the predator instinct, the predators. It calls into question, where did they come from? How did they lose their own instruction wherever they come from? Who taught them? Who's their mom? Who's their dad? How come they don't look at things like we look at things? So how is it that we have these terminology and initiatives of carbon and emissions trading and carbon pricing that follows in this same privatization footstep and turns the sacredness of Mother Earth and its carbon cycling capacity into property to be bought and sold in a global market as a commodity? Before you can treat anything as a commodity and trading in a trading system, you gotta define whose property right that is. It's a property right issue. Who owns the air to be traded? It's the polluting industry. It's Chevron. It was Statoil when Statoil was known as the state-operated Norway. Oil. Shell. I can go down the line. Total in France. It allows the companies to offset and go carbon neutral. Zero net emissions. Zero net emissions. That sounds good. But I've been in the hallways of the UN climate negotiation. You got to look at the devil in the details. Back in San Francisco, California, we got people of color, poor people, living in Richmond, California, in the Bay Area. There's oil refinery, Chevron. Those people are dying of lung issues, respiratory illnesses. So they asked Chevron, how come you're not cutting back your toxic emissions? They say, well, you don't understand. The community says, well, what is it that we don't understand? Well, we are going carbon neutral. We are going carbon neutral. Well, how are you doing this? We're buying carbon credits of the carbon in the conserve the trees in the Amazon. Then they put it on the shoulders of the community. Well, what's your answer? Aren't you for saving the trees of your brothers and sisters in the tropical forests in the Amazon? They put it on our shoulders. But then if we look at these solutions they're coming up with, it has to do about money. It doesn't contribute to achieving the protection of our Earth's climate. No. How did that happen? Okay. That's the final one. So it is a false solution. You can go to our IEN webpage and ienearth.org. We have a report we collaborated with the Climate Justice Alliance. It's called Carbon Pricing. It talks about what I talked about. We got to really check out these market systems. The financialization of nature. It's a process that separates and quantifies the Earth's cycles and functions, turning all of nature into units to be sold in financial markets. I understand it's alive and well in Sweden. It's alive and well in Switzerland. It's alive and well in Europe. And people still don't know where that money comes from. It comes from the polluters. It doesn't come from the beautiful, some money in the banking system that has no tie to it. It comes from the polluting industry. It's a greenwash, eh? So Mother Earth is a source of life that needs to be protected, not a resource to be exploited and commodified as natural capital. So that summarizes my presentation, that if we are to be at peace with Mother Earth, if we are to be at peace with creation, that we got to look at all these different parts that are going on and not be violent towards Mother Earth. There was the fathers, I don't know, they call him the father of ecological economics. You might know him. How many economists in here? Come on, raise your hand. Oh, there's one, only two. Herman Daly. He's nodding his head. Herman Daly once said, there is something fundamentally wrong in treating the earth as if it were a business in liquidation. Yeah. So it's not just me and my paranoia, as I work on these issues, but we got to stop this predatory treatment and violence towards Mother Earth. We have to be at peace with Mother Earth. So Earth jurisprudence recognizes the concept that we only have one Mother Earth. We must stand together in solidarity to protect her. So this final film, there was a moment at Standing Rock. Who was at Standing Rock, by the way? Raise your hand. All right. Toshka was there. Yeah, nephew, Toshka. So there was a moment, and this is part of the magic and the beauty of all these thousands of people. I think we grew to 10,000 people. When I say we, there were so many camps of Lakota, Dakota people. Even the Anishinaabe Ojibwe had their camp. The Oneida camp from way out east, they were there. The Dene Navajo on my mom's side, they were there. Even built a hogan in the middle of the camp. Many different ways of teepee lodges that were put up. It was a beautiful area. It became one of the largest towns and cities in North Dakota, and it could qualify for a post number, right? Yeah, it became a town, a city. And the infrastructure, the hollow to handle waste, handle food, water system, and all those headaches that come with that. And winter was coming. Winter was coming. And I know the people out there. I know how harsh those winters are, so the people were very concerned of this coming winter that was coming. But the horse riders, the role of the sacred fire of the Ocheti Shokomi, the 7 council fires of the Sioux Nation, is the tradition of our people out there, of the people. And I have to go back to something I mentioned in the beginning about acculturation and assimilation. Colonization comes with it one of the symptoms called internalized oppression. Somehow we learn the way of the oppressor. It's deep inside us, and we internalize it. Corporations understand this. Some of the churches understand this. They've studied it. And part of this position, there's a 0 right there, is that we become our worst enemy. Internalized oppression becomes lateral oppression. So we're developing the skills on how to deal with that, to have our own indigenous conflict resolution, folks, to be able to have our own people that come in, youth as well as our women's societies. So there was a moment, and then that's what this little short video is about. A beautiful moment. When the horse riders were coming in, you can see the whole camp in the valley. You can see them coming into a circle. And we had built a fire, and the people were gathered because this was the lighting of the sacred fire of the Ocheti Shokomi. This was not this other fire, which was the community fire over here as the entrance road comes in. This was the restoration of the traditional council of the 7 council fires coming together again. The governments do not like this. The corporations do not like this. It's a threat to them. They want us to conform to the colonial ways. They want us to conform to the white man ways. They want us to lose our identity. They are scared of that traditional fire, sacred fire. In my work in the UN, in my travels throughout the world with indigenous peoples, it's as if they want to stamp out and of all these sacred fires wherever there's strong indigenous peoples. That's what we are dealing with. So I'm going to have you see this. My other Tahashi who passed away, John Trudell, this is a song he wrote about Crazy Horse, a warrior. I think he was Oglala Tahashi. Oglala and Sekanju, Crazy Horse. And this is about a message that John Trudell said about where society is at now. Uh-oh. Okay. I'm in a negative zero.
material fields, material harvest, decoration on chain that binds, mirrors gold, the people lose their minds. Crazy horse, we hear what you say. One earth, one mother. One does not sell the earth, the people walk on. We are the land. Is now and then. Dream smokes touch the clouds. Funny day when death didn't die. Real world time, tricks, shadows lie. Red, white, perception, deception. Predator tries civilizing us, but the tribes will not go without return. Genetic light from the other side. A song from the heart, our hearts to give. The wild days, the glory days live. Crazy voice, we hear what you say. One earth, one mother. One does not sell the earth, the people walk upon. How do we sell our motherland? How do we sell the stars? How do we sell the air? Crazy voice, we hear what you say. Crazy voice, we hear what you say. We are the seventh generation. We are the seventh generation.